So I wanted to just welcome everybody and say thank you. And three out of our five participants, three of the five are in Japan right now. So they're getting up exceptionally early to join us. And we really appreciate all of the participants. Um, I'm going to introduce them one at a time, but they're going to do their own introduction in terms of where they are and what they're up to these days. And then following that, we have a few prepared questions that we're going to go around and have them talk about. And then we're going to leave at the end at least 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. And as they're talking, if you have questions, please, as Kumi suggested, put them in the chat. And when we get around to the Q&A, we'll start there, but you'll also be able to just open up your mics and ask questions and have a conversation directly. Okay, so let's start with Evan Moore.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. So my name is Evan Moore. I graduated in 2022 from UCSD with a minor in Japanese studies. So my major was actually economics. Um, One thing to note is I was like a transfer student from community college. So I actually only went to UCSD for the final 2 years of my undergraduate kind of career. And 2022, that was like kind of during the pandemic. So I didn't really get like the full, going to UCSD experience, but I have the degree and whatnot. So here I am. I will say let's see. After that, then I took like a little bit of time because the entrance period for Japanese schools doesn't exactly line up with the American one. It's like a couple months later. And so after that, I prepared some applications for Japanese master's programs for Kyoto University and Waseda University and some other universities to do like economics and other business programs. Eventually, I got accepted to Kyoto University for international MBA program, so business, administration, and management. Um, and now I'm just, about to graduate for that. So in about a month, I graduate that program. It was a 2-year program, and yeah. Let's see. My current affiliations are, let's say, so currently I'm, like I mentioned before, I graduate in about a month. So that means that next April, which is like kind of the entrance period for companies in Japan, I will be working at Capcom, which is a Japanese video game company. It's a quite like large company in Japan. Uh, and they are based in Osaka, and I'm being employed for general employment. It's like like Sogo Shoku, like if you have heard of that. We can maybe talk about that a little bit later, but that's like a very unique aspect of Japanese culture. Um, let's see. Um, so that's yeah, I would say that's like my post-graduation career path. Moving on to why I chose to study Japanese at UCSD, or why I chose to minor in Japanese at UCSD. Uh, I would say that for me personally, it might be a bit different than some of the other speakers, but I've been studying Japanese since I was about 13 or 14 years old. I was lucky enough that my high school had it as like a foreign language option. So we had like French, ASL, um, Spanish, and Japanese. And I decided to take Japanese when I entered high school. Um, which I was very fortunate that we had that option. Um, After that, we had like exchange students come to our high school, and I made friends with Japanese students and whatnot, and got to know them, which is really kind of the reason why I decided I wanted to study Japanese super seriously. That's like kind of around the period when I started to get really into Japanese culture, is like when I started making friends who were Japanese, and I was like, wow, this is like super cool. I can like talk to people from like across the planet in their own language. This is like super special and super. That was like yeah, like 16-year-old Evan had that experience, and it was like super formative and super special. When I was 1 year later, when I was 17, I went to Japan with my high school Japanese teacher, and that was like kind of the point where I was like, okay, like I really want to try living here. even if it's like a couple years, even if it's not for a super long time or my whole life. I really need to like just see what it's like to like live here long term. Um, so all throughout kind of undergrad and whatnot, that was like sort of my dream, was to like find a way to just like get to Japan for at least like a year or two. Um, COVID happened, obviously. And so that kind of made things difficult, or like put a bump in the road on my way to get to Japan. But eventually I sort of decided that the best way to do so would be, um, continuing my Japanese studies and then going for a master's. Um, by the time I got to UCSD, the reason that I did Japanese studies, was sort of natural. I really enjoyed studying the language. I studied it in my own time a lot. So like I was doing it as like a hobby, throughout my time at community college. And then once I got to UCSD, I was like, you know, it was sort of like the natural choice to like keep studying it and to keep taking classes to keep brushed up and whatnot on my Japanese ability. Um, I will also say that I got into some other universities after graduating community college, and definitely like the after doing some research, I saw that like, UCSD had like a very, very, very competitive and very, very good Japanese studies program, which is, part of the reason why I actually chose UCSD was because the Japanese studies program is so good. Um,
Evan, thank you.
yeah.
Um, I know we gave you all a few other questions also to follow, but let's pause there and let me get
Mhm.
other people on this topic,
Yeah.
and then it's introduction, and then let's move on to more discussion about your experience here at UCSD. And thank you for raising the issue of being a transfer student. I think transfer students who major or minor in Japanese studies, I'd like to hear more later about that experience, because you have a shorter period of time and we have a pretty onerous requirement for language. So I would love to hear more about that from you later, because I really admire people who manage to do this coming in as transfer students, given how many requirements we have. So next on up is Megan Murata. Megan,
Alrighty.
yeah.
Alrighty, so good afternoon, good morning. I'm Megan Murata. I graduated UC SD in end of winter quarter 2019, and then went on the JET program. So yeah, and I majored in Japanese studies. And since then I've been working in Japan with Japanese and all sorts of things. I guess going into the kind of why I chose Japanese studies, my last name I come by honestly. I am half Japanese. And so I thought it was really cool that my dad could you know, translate on the fly. I grew up with many, many old manga being read to me as bedtime stories. So that was kind of my introduction there. And with that, I wanted to get to a similar level. And so I set my sights on UCSD. I visited the campus, fell in love with it, loved the fact that it had up to fifth year Japanese language programs, very strong study abroad programs. And so there I went.
Thank you, Megan. And I know you've had several different kinds of employment, and
Yes.
we'll be interested to hear, because you've done a lot since you came back from JET as well. So yeah, we'll get into that more later as well. Samantha Stauch.
Oh my gosh, you said my last name correctly. That makes me so happy. That never happens. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Stauch. I graduated from UC San Diego in 2020, if you can believe it. And I majored in political science, international relations, and I minored in Japanese studies. Now I currently live and work in Gunma Prefecture, Japan, which I did not know about prior to coming on the JET program, where I now work as an assistant language teacher. And I've been doing so for the last 3 years, and come August will be the 4th year of my contract. Yeah, so to get into why I chose Japanese studies, it's a bit of a interesting story. So when I first entered UC San Diego, I was actually a marine biology major. I had grown up my whole life being told STEM, STEM, STEM. STEM is the only thing that will get you anywhere, is what I was told. And I really don't like STEM. And so marine biology was the closest I could get to STEM and still enjoy it. But when I got to UCSD, I really wasn't terribly interested in continuing that. And so during my first year, I had a bit of a crisis, if you will. And I spoke with my friends and my family, and they said, you know, Sam, you really love politics, and you know, you're really interested in Japanese, because when I was, you know, like many Americans growing up, I was really interested in Japanese pop culture. I loved Pokemon, I loved Yu-Gi-Oh, all of these really important, you know, IPs were part of my childhood. And I actually didn't even know they were Japanese when I was young. And that's also something I've learned from my students, is that when you're a child, your world is so small. You think everything is, you know, that's just the way it is. My students have no idea that McDonald's is actually American. And that's one of the funniest things, one of the funniest conversations I've had with them. And so when I started to learn more about Japan, kind of around in high school, when I started to learn about the genre we all know as anime, I thought, okay, well, when I go to university and I get the chance to take a language because I'm an Eleanor Roosevelt college student, I want to try something new. And it was the best decision I ever could have made for myself. And once I started taking my first Japanese classes, I thought, oh, this is so much fun. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And that's kind of, yes, CRC, woo. But that's kind of how I ended up as a Japanese studies minor. Thank you.
Okay, that's, I love the part about Japanese pop culture kind of got you interested, but you didn't even know it was Japanese at first.
I had no idea.
There you
And that was the funniest thing.
And here you are. Okay, Derek, say.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Derek. I graduated UCSD winter of 2021, so in the midst of pandemic. I was a Japanese studies minor, so I was a computer science major, and I currently have been working at Google as a software engineer for 3.5 years. As to how I got into studying Japanese, I think a lot of people can relate that I got into the interest in Japanese because of, for me it's because of video games and music. I didn't watch so much anime, but I was lucky enough to went to high school that also offered Japanese. So I studied Japanese over there for 4 years. I actually participated in a speech contest during my junior and senior year. So there's that. And then coming to university, I want to do STEM and not lose what I was passionate about since middle school and high school, which was Japanese. So so for the next 4 years, I just kept taking Japanese. I actually went to studying Japanese with no intention of minoring. However, by the time I got to the 140 series, I was like this close to finishing a minor anyway, so I just went and declared the minor. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. And I go to Japan every year.
Thank you, Derek. Jacqueline Young.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jacqueline Yang. You guys can call me Jackie for short. And yeah, I graduated with a major in Japanese studies in 2020 as well, same as Samantha. And yeah, I think like same as Samantha, getting up to, you know, where I am now, it's definitely been a journey. But yeah, sort of my interest in Japanese, I think same with everybody, there was always some sort of Japanese sort of made type of product or media that was exposed to me as a child without me even knowing it. And then obviously for me, I of course love the media such as manga, anime, music, all that. But my particular interest in it was terms of the digital space. Obviously, the time I was growing up, there's also the internet. You're being connected to all these people around the world. And then through the internet space, I was able to recognize about all the products that were made in Japan, technology wise. So same as, Samantha, I actually went into STEM. I was majoring in computer science, computer engineering actually. And then I started to kind of like realize how kind of restrictive the space was. But during that time too, I was also taking Japanese classes. And just through those classes, I think it further built my sort of passion for learning about Japan and also learning Japanese in general. And so because of that, I actually switched my major to Japanese studies and, took some computer programming classes here and there, but ultimately I didn't really go that far into it in terms of like, say, double major or anything like that. But luckily, because of that sort of foundation I had with like, coding and then also Japanese, it was able to get me to where I am now, where I'm working at Wikimedia, a digital marketing company. And my work as a digital content specialist is me updating websites for various companies, such as Japanese car companies. And so, yeah, I update both their English websites and their Japanese websites. And again, just a sort of good sort of building off of my interest and also the stuff I had learned from school. I eventually got to where I am now.
Uh, uh, Thank you, Jackie. That leads us to something that some of you spoke a little bit about, but not everybody did. Jackie told us a little bit about the connection between her Japanese studies major and what she's doing now. And if you have anything more to add about that, Jackie, that would be great. But let's turn to that topic now and let everybody talk about that, because I think a lot of our current students would be interested to know, whether it's a minor or a major, um, how the Japanese studies aspect of your background may have influenced or helped you along the way, and the pathway from being a student to where you are now for each one of you, I think is of great interest to people. So Jackie, why don't I let you see if there's anything else you'd like to add, and then we'll go back around the room.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think obviously the whole Japanese courses that I took from like 10A to all the way to like 135A, C and all that, honestly, it really helped me a lot just because in my job marketing, you're encountering various different types of things. And so I think just even having an introduction to those various aspects of Japan, even as small as they are, even though I'm not an expert in them, I think being exposed to them helped me a lot with building my career, because then as I was, doing stuff online with digital content, I was able to be like, oh, I recognize learning this from, my Japanese classes. And so it was an easy sort of bridge to go from knowing about it a little bit to learning a lot about it as I was doing the work with it. So say for instance, SDGs, I encountered that a lot in terms of my companies that I work with now, because some of them are, I think I mentioned car companies. And so, things like sustainability and all that, I think you can see how it's sort of marketed in Japan versus America. And obviously in America, I don't think we really know about SDGs, or we know it under different sort of wording. And so, me, if I had never been introduced to the idea of SDGs, me learning from the Japanese context, I'd be like, oh, what is this? But luckily I did. So I was able to build off of that. And then also just in general, some of my favorite classes in my Japanese courses were the ones that dealt with contemporary courses or contemporary just issues in Japan in general. So, obviously from that, you're learning about the sort of history behind the contemporary issues. And then you learn about how they're affecting Japan now. And so I think that also really helps sort of shape my understanding of the culture of Japan. And so then as I use that, whether it be in my current work at WIC or even in my side projects that I do for digital content creators, it's been very helpful just sort of understanding like that different perspective versus, the American perspective.
Jackie, thanks. That's great. Let's go backwards around the room, and then we'll switch it up a little bit. But Derek, would you like to comment about this as well, this topic?
Yeah, so I want to make a disclaimer saying that like a lot of the things that I took out of studying Japanese at UCSD has mostly affected my personal life. I mean, as a software engineer, there's only so much you could do with your language, right? So I can definitely relate to what Jackie said about like a lot of the things you're exposed in the Japanese studies coming up in like casual conversation, or like some work conference that I've attended before that that dealt with some of the topics that or like some SDGs, for example, that come out during Japanese studies. I want to say one of the most impactful ones that I read that for me would be like natural disasters, especially earthquakes, because Japan is on active fault zone. So one of the biggest question that like Japan as a whole has to answer is what do you do in when in response to an earthquake? And actually this question is one of the things my partner is directly tackling right now, because he works on an application that does disaster notification, and I've been just kind of a supporter, just like offering my perspective as a software engineer on how to approach things.
Thank you, Derek. Samantha?
Hi. So when it comes to using Japanese, of course, working in a Japanese classroom or working in Japanese schools, it's definitely extremely important. Although my primary role is an English teacher, and I'm using primarily English inside the classroom, everything outside of the classroom, I'm communicating with my vice principal, my principals, my co-teachers, almost strictly in Japanese, with the exception of the handful of English teachers who, of course, want to go over grammar points, lesson plans, things like that, just want to chat, which is always quite fun. But outside of my role in the classroom, I actually also volunteer, I suppose, with the local prefectural government here in Gunma. So within the JET program, you'll meet some of these groups who are usually on a volunteer basis, but this one specific group I work with called JomoJet is an actual grassroots internationalization initiative created by the Gunma prefectural government in order to sort of create events and facilitate the globalization of Gunma, the internationalization of Gunma. And so we host a wide variety of events, from language exchange to like game nights, paint nights. We do all kinds of really fun things. Actually, this weekend we have a very exciting event about capoeira, which is the Brazilian dance martial art, because there's a huge Brazilian population here in Gunma. So I've had this really wonderful opportunity to use my Japanese skills, to use my the multicultural skills and multicultural communication that I learned at UCSD and through the Japanese Studies program in a wide variety of situations. In fact, one of my favorite events we put on is called International Carnival, and we do it with one of the International Relations Society of a neighboring city. And we host usually about 15 different delegations of countries here in Gunma. And we have a massive festival where we get to speak with Japanese people. We get to speak with people from other countries. And it's a really exciting event where you get to hone your communication skills in Japanese. And it's just been one of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had. And I'm really grateful to the Japanese Studies Department for having prepared me so well for this type of these types of opportunities, and to really improve my communication strategies.
Samantha, I forgot, maybe you mentioned this earlier. How long have you been doing JET?
I came in, actually, it's really funny. I was accepted in 2020, but as we all know,
Yeah.
and so I had to wait quite a bit. So I arrived in October of 2021, and I've been in the same place ever since.
Okay, good. Okay, Megan?
Alrighty. So firstly, I think I forgot to mention where I currently am. I'm at Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University. I am one of the multitude of international contract employees, and I work specifically within the outreach and research office with the research team. So that's all a very long mouthful to say. But currently, obviously my work is pretty much done in Japanese. The bulk of what I do day to day is actually translating emails from Japanese to English for those professors that either don't speak very much Japanese, don't read very much Japanese, or just it's faster for them to reply in English. And so they would prefer to have the email exchanges in English, even if they call the office, if they come to the office in person, they're perfectly able to speak Japanese with whoever's in charge of their grant. So language-wise, obviously, that's very important. One of the other things that has been very helpful is because I'm part of the research team and I did an honors thesis under Professor Turner, I'm finding that I'm reading through various applications. And so having had to write my own honors thesis, I'm able to kind of pull from that and go, okay, well, what are some of these things that aren't quite right here? Is there anything standing out to me that's not, it doesn't quite make sense, that needs a little bit more explanation for the layperson to read, etc. I'm also involved with the Research Ethics Compliance Committee. And so that also comes back to reading through the methodology for different research projects and trying to ping things prior to the submission to the committee to try and get that approval through faster. And so I've definitely found that having done some research, albeit not necessarily on the exact same things that people are currently doing research on at APU, has been incredibly helpful.
Megan, since I know a little bit about how you the in between being a Japanese studies major and where you are now, I think people might benefit from this. Our current students may benefit from knowing that you didn't move from a BA here directly to where you are now. And I think sometimes people don't understand the various steps that go into, you know, a few years later being in a position that you really like. And you've been in a couple positions you really liked. So would you just help them understand where you, because you also did JET, for example, right? Would you fill that in a little bit for folks?
Sure. So after I graduated end of winter quarter 2019, I actually graduated early in part because, also pardon, one of my cats has come. So if you see a random tail pop up, that's one of my cats. So I graduated early actually, just in case I did get called to go early on JET. And then when I did go on JET in July 2019, I was in Hofu, Yamaguchi. I was there for 3 years during the pandemic. And then after 3 years, I decided, okay, I enjoy teaching, but I don't see this as being my ultimate career path. And so I looked into a couple different things and I ended up moving back to the US. I was very temporarily at a startup before I found a position at the Japan Foundation Los Angeles. And in that position, I was reviewing 2 of the grants that the JFLA offers to support Japanese language programs. So most of my work was reviewing the grant applications and being in contact with the teachers who submitted those applications. So I was in charge of the event grant as well as the Japanese teaching materials purchasing grant. So things for classroom usage that wasn't just limited to textbooks, but it could be manga, DVDs, what have you. And so in that position, I was using Japanese language both within the office, as that was the predominant language of use. But I was also getting to know the different Japanese language programs throughout the US quite well, and attending different events for that. And then I knew I did really want to come back to Japan. So when through the JET program, JET jobs page, I found my current position. I applied and said, what the hey? Ironically, I was actually sitting in Haneda waiting for my plane to come back from my friend's wedding. So I'm sitting there just typing things out. And I got the interview. Much like many Japanese companies, APU hires kind of a list of different positions that are open. And you just try and tailor your application to whichever one you think you best fit. And whether or not that's the position you get is entirely up in the air. But I got the position and here I am now.
Thank you, Megan. I think that I mean, honestly, the nitty gritty of how you go about finding positions is actually one of the things I think that until you do it, you don't always know actually what's involved. So thank you. Evan, you talked a little bit about this earlier, but would you like to add anything to this conversation?
Yeah. I would say so. I think for me, like the way I view Japanese classes, you can kind of split it up into like language and then like context. So like the context you're learning the language and the language itself. I think it kind of goes without saying that like if you want to go to Japan, the language is like super important, right? So like if you want to work in Japan or you want to exist in Japan or you want to have friends in Japan, learning the language is super important. I would say that like for me, a really big strong point of UCSD Japanese program that helped me is like the context in which you learn the language. Um, a lot of the topics that the teachers chose in like the 10 or so classes that I took at UCSD were like actually super applicable, kind of like Jacqueline mentioned, like we learned about like SDGs and like conversations that they're actually having in Japan. So when I came here, I wasn't like, totally, uh, out of the know. One thing that really helped, I think it was in Sato Sensei's class actually, was like we learned about like the job hunting process, which in Japan, this is kind of hinting at the question that was asked to me in the chat, but the job hunting process in Japan is very formatted and very decided. So it happens at a very distinct time. There's a very distinct, like, very determined, like, step-by-step process that you must follow in order to get a job in Japan at that, like, hiring time. And in the interviews, they tend to ask, like, almost all the same questions. One of the questions is like, oh, like, what did you try or what did you put the most effort into in your time in school? And in the classes at UCSD, we actually had, like, assignments where to learn Japanese, we answered these questions and prepared our answers for these questions and like, did almost kind of went through like a play pretend job interview process, job hunting process in our Japanese classes. And so I think that really helped me a lot was the amount of care and the amount of attention that went into the topics that were and the context that we're learning Japanese in at UCSD.
Thank you, Evan. Do any of the other, does anyone of our alumni want to add anything else to this particular part of our conversation before we move on? So the next question we had asked you to just say a few words about had to do with your favorite classes, your favorite kinds of assignments, and what you enjoyed about your Japanese studies time at UCSD. And some of you have connected that already to your current positions, but let's start. So Evan, let's go backwards, starting with you this time. So, and actually what you just said is sort of a nice segue into that because you pointing out one of the kind of brilliant things that I think our language faculty does, which is actually connect the context, as you said, to the language. But would you like to add anything else about your favorite aspects of the program?
Yeah. So I think that is for sure one of the biggest ones. That assignment that I actually mentioned, like I went back when I went through the job hunting process about a year and a half after initially doing that assignment. I like went back into my Google Drive and like sifted through to like find those documents and actually use those as like a foundation or like a basis or starting point to like prepare myself for the interviews that I was going through. So that was like super helpful. The Some of the other things I would mention is the first of which is like I think the Japanese studies faculty really cares about like the relationships and experiences that you have in the classroom. So like a lot of encouragement around cooperation through like group projects and stuff and like getting to know your classmates and like getting to like talk to them, hear their experiences. I think that's like amazing. I think it's really good for language learning. And then another thing I would say is, of course, the professors are like they make it very clear that they are there to help you and they're after school or like after class and whatnot as well. And so, yeah, I definitely took a lot of advantage of those resources and whatnot. And I would really recommend any incoming Japanese studies students to like definitely go to office hours, talk to your professors, ask them questions about like, you know, how can I get to Japan? How can I get a job in Japan? How can I study in Japan? Because they have a lot of really good advice.
Megan, would you like to weigh in on this topic of your favorite aspects of the program?
Sure. I not only having a fantastic series, just fantastic teachers in general. I also really liked the flexibility in the sense that we were generally given kind of a large topic as an end of quarter project, but we had a lot of flexibility to choose something that was interesting to us within that broader sphere. And sometimes that was group work, sometimes that was more individual work based on class size, topics, what have you. But within the language classes, I always really enjoyed the ability to dive deeper into my own interests within Japanese. I think that also really helped keep me motivated in learning additional vocabulary specifically for those projects. Outside of that, I really did enjoy, I don't remember the course number, but the Japanese politics course was incredibly interesting. And I think really also very helpful even now, especially considering the recent upset in Japanese politics back in October. And so being able to have a little bit more context as to what that really meant was incredibly helpful. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention again the honors thesis because I very much enjoyed that. And again, it has been incredibly helpful to my current position. I think it was also a talking point because it's still on my resume as something that I did. So I wrote my honors thesis comparing fan fiction in English to doujinshi in Japanese and platforms, among other things, and fan culture, etc. And so that was definitely a talking point for my previous job at the Japan Foundation Los Angeles. And obviously, in terms of methodology, etc., it's been very, very helpful as a background for my current position.
I will just add to what you just said for those folks who might be STEM majors and Japanese studies minors. Another alumni of our program who majored in cell biology and went to pharmacy school said that in every interview she had in pharmacy school, for pharmacy school, in pharmacy school, for residency, for her position now as a pharmacist here at Scripps Health, she was asked about her Japanese studies work because that was so different on her resume from the other people that were being interviewed. So she had to talk about her work at UCSD in Japanese studies every single interview, which surprised me, but I found it very interesting. So, you know, yeah, it's a talking point. Samantha, on this topic of your favorite things about the program and most useful to you?
Right. For me, I would say definitely the amount of work we put into our presentations. The presentations were such an important aspect because it's difficult for people to do presentations even in their native language, right? You know, people get nervous, they struggle here and there. And to be able to do that effectively and efficiently in a second language made doing it in your primary language so much easier. It takes away a bit of the stress. And for me, especially preparing those presentations, being able to talk confidently in front of people and something that I'd spent, weeks preparing really helped me for my current job, right? Where I sit in front of children and I tell them what we need to do and how we're going to do it. And I present things to my co-teachers, to my vice principal, and my principal. And those presentation skills have come, really in handy for me, especially. Somewhere around early college, I started to really get nervous about doing presentations, right? You have these great big lecture halls, and it's a bit scary and a bit different from people you grew up your whole life with in high school. But being able to have those opportunities to prepare not just simple presentations, but academic presentations as well was really fundamental in helping me move forward, not just as a Japanese studies minor, but also in my political science major. Because ultimately, these presentations in academic Japanese helped me become a research apprentice actually at the university for the Department of Political Science, where I ended up working on my, I guess, capstone thesis on Japanese right-wing interest groups. And that was really exciting and interesting for me to be able to have all of those skills kind of coinciding at one time. And on top of that, academics aside, the Japanese Studies department is the most friendly department, I think, at UC San Diego. And I love that so much about it. I feel so much closer to this department than I do my own major. Because the friends and relationships I cultivated during that time were so important in these years afterwards in starting my career. And I would like to give a special thank you to Tokuda Sensei, Mochizuki Sensei, and Masaki Sensei, and all the teachers I had. You were so wonderful and so lovely. And I really loved that in every class I went to in Japanese studies, it felt like everybody wanted to be there. Everyone was so excited to try Japanese, to learn Japanese, to try all of these new interests that we had, and put it all together in one classroom. It really felt like a highly motivated group of individuals that you were working with that sometimes you didn't always feel in those larger lecture halls. So I'm very grateful to the program for being such a bright spot in my academic career.
On that cheerful note, yeah. Thank you, Samantha. Derek?
So yes, a lot of things that the previous panelists have already covered, I think more or less applies to me in that I think the most rewarding part of the Japanese program, especially at the upper division, is like everyone is the community is small, so it's like you really get to know everyone and each other. But like I did appreciate when I took 140 with Sato Sensei that had the liberty to do research into the things that I was interested, and then also 135 with Takeda Sensei. It's not was not well. I had an assignment that I was like external coordinator for an event because 135 series is for most part is about like trying to put together an event, and that it's memorable to me because even I was supposed to coordinate with the external external people through email, but at that time my laptop broke, so I ended up having to write everything out by hand, and Takeda Sensei just took the handwritten letter and sent it to the other person through line, and that was always memorable. And it actually got published in a book, so that was fun. But other than that, circling back to like the research that I've done during the 140 series, it had my interest in these topics has actually led me to meet a whole bunch of people that I talked to today in Japan, which is like I can't it's like I cannot believe that just happened in a matter of a few years. But now I have a lot of contacts in Japan. One of the people that I met partially through Sato Sensei research is actually my current partner. So is that.
Yeah. Thank you. Jackie?
Yeah. So I think just everyone kind of mentioned it before, but one of my favorite sort of classes were in just all my Japanese courses was the ones where you sort of chose what you wanted to talk about. I think Samantha mentioned it, but a lot of the times, obviously, people are choosing topics that they want to talk about. So I think you can really feel their enthusiasm for it more when they're presenting about something that they wanted to talk about. But of course, even in the sort of assigned ones that we were given, they obviously were very helpful in sort of just giving us more context about Japan and the sort of cultures that you might might see when you go to Japan. And then even for me in my sort of whether it be a Japanese class where it's like language classes where it's fully Japanese, or even in classes where you're writing in English, say for instance, Japan 190, and you're writing about the different types of aspects, social issues that's happening in Japan. Obviously, those were very interesting because I think it exposed a lot of people to concepts about Japan that maybe they had never thought about. And then even more so, that helped me in my actually not my current job, well, kind of. As I mentioned before, Wikimedia, I work with car companies, and no offense to my company, but I don't care that much about cars, but I'll do the work and I do my work well. But on my side, as a sort of side hobby of mine, and part of the way I was able to build my portfolio for my current job in marketing is because I was doing translations, just sort of fan translations for digital content creators from Japan. And so I think because I was given those various points of sort of new ideas from Japan, whether it be a topic that a student had chosen to talk about, or it be one that was assigned to me by our teachers, I think that allowed me to, again, be able to listen to these digital content creators talk about these ideas, and then me knowing automatically about them, I could sort of be able to translate it faster because, say, for instance, Akiyamondai, it's a very niche issue in Japan, right? And so if you weren't, most people in America or English-speaking countries, they're not learning about Akiyamondai, right? But luckily, through my classes, I was able to learn about it. And so whenever a Japanese content creator was talking about it, I could easily translate it because maybe the person lives in the countryside and they're like, oh yeah, this is a sort of growing issue thing, where, the place is farther from me, they're starting to be abandoned, stuff like that. And so a lot of the times, these, even again, the ones that you got to choose the topics, it was obviously interesting to me, but even the ones where you're getting these sort of social contemporary issues assigned to you to talk about, they're very interesting and also, again, very helpful for my current career.
Thank you. This is a really, you guys have already covered one of the other things we were going to ask you about, so I'm going to skip down to the, I think these are really very integrated comments that you're making, and I think you've covered the issues of how the Japanese studies major or minor helped you achieve your personal and professional goals. But if you have more to say about that, please add it in. And I'm going to skip down to this last question we asked you to prepare, and then we'll go to Q&A. And the last thing we asked you to do was to just think about any message that we may not have thought to ask you to talk about, but any message you have for current students that you think you would have benefited from, something that you might have benefited from knowing when you were a student heading out post UCSD. So why don't we go back around and start with Evan?
Yeah. I feel like this might come off as like a cliche, like, stay in school, pay attention, do your homework and stuff. But like, really, I would say when I was in my graduate program, so you have at my graduate program at Kyoto University for business, we had the option to take classes in English or Japanese, depending on like our Japanese skill. And a lot of the students there, from all different countries were taking mostly classes in English, kind of staying in their lane, finishing those classes, focusing on those classes, while also having the dream to work in Japan and find a job there. One of the things that I saw a lot was they would get to the end, they would have great grades in their business classes, but they wouldn't be able to speak Japanese to a level that like let them get a job in Japan. Um, if your dream is to do something related to Japanese or Japan, I really think there's like no better skill, obviously maybe, than learning Japanese. So I would say if that's your goal, taking Japanese classes, focusing on those Japanese classes, the topics that are discussed in those classes, and really like paying special attention to how your how those contexts and that language relates to your specific goal. So if you want to be a translator, probably really focus on, kanji and reading and writing. If you want to be, if you want to get into like a job, similar to mine, maybe like business or something, I would focus on like listening and speaking quite a bit. So really think about like, your Japanese related goal and focus on, the skills that might be needed for achieving that goal in relation to Japanese. Yeah, that would probably be my advice.
Thank you. I would, I want to just add one thing to that, which is that after you leave UCSD, even in graduate school, it's actually very difficult to have time to actually learn a new language. And especially if you aren't going into graduate school, after you just are out in the world doing a job of any kind, this is not something you can back up and do easily because it's time consuming and you need good instruction. And so I think that's a really interesting thing you emphasized, Evan, and I think it's worth everybody's busy in their undergraduate years, but you're never far away from the opportunity to focus on the language learning, right?
Yeah, that's an amazing point, actually. Like, yeah, it becomes more and more difficult to find time to allocate, hours a day studying Japanese, which is kind of what you need to do if you want to like get to a proficient enough level to work in Japan. Unfortunately. So yeah, like you mentioned, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Megan?
I would say that, especially these past couple years, maybe now more than ever, job hunting in the world is kind of scary. But the world is both a lot bigger and a lot smaller than you think it is, especially in terms of Japanese language. And so make sure that, you're taking the time to grab lunch with, people from your Japanese language classes. Make sure you're making time to go to office hours. You can, and even once you get out into the world after you've graduated, you can build a community anywhere. It can be hard to start. So some places like the JET program sometimes come with inbuilt communities and networks. Um, some places don't. But I think that people, connections, friends, really are very, very helpful on both a personal and professional level. Because it's hard to get up and go to work in the morning feeling like, oh, everything sucks and I don't want to do this. So sometimes you do have to work those jobs to get to where you want to be. That's definitely true. But making sure you've got friends and people on the outside too, that are helping you along the way, or making sure you want to get up and keep doing whatever you're doing on the side, and continuing whatever that is, be it, learning kanji to become a translator, working on voice acting classes outside to become a seiyuu, whatever your particular passion is, working on games, working on manga, working on anime, building that community and making sure that you've got friends, I think is also very important. And it's one of those things where you never know what somebody else is going to find in their job. Be like, oh, hey, so and so's hiring for whatever, and you can find it out that way.
Thank you. I would just add that I think any of the faculty here can add their voice to this later as well. But having known many students who've gone off to the JET program, one thing I've noticed when they come back is that they have a remarkable network of people. And that network doesn't seem to go away. Like you follow the former Jets over the period of the next 10, 15 years or something, which many of us have now had time to do. And they're still friends and colleagues with people who are now all over the world doing all kinds of different things. So I think that's it's very nice to focus on the fact that no matter what you're doing, you can be building those communities and networks, which then take you in sometimes unexpected directions. So yeah, Samantha?
Right. I'm going to say two cliches here, so please forgive me ahead of time. The first I will say is that I think becoming a teacher made me a much better student. I was able to, I'm serious, I was able to recognize things in myself that I saw in my students. And one of those things is the second cliche, pardon me, which is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Especially when it comes to learning language, especially when it comes to living in a new place, you are going to feel uncomfortable. But that's where the real learning happens, right? So when my students, they come across something in our reading, they come across a conversation point and they don't know what it is and it scares them, right? They say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. But it's once we get to that point that you're actually using your brain, which is your muscle, right? It's your main muscle, and you have to flex it, you have to use it. And that was something for me that when I came here, or prior to coming to Japan, actually, I think one of my personality traits is my confidence. And coming to Japan, I had to be okay with feeling a bit less confident in myself. I had to learn a lot more, and I had to experience things in my daily life that I didn't expect. For example, I've told my students this story many times. My very first, maybe my second day living in this apartment, which I moved into as a JET program participant, my washing machine broke. All right. And I know how to do that in my native country, in my native language, and I know exactly who to call. I had no idea what to do, and it was only my second day. I didn't have groceries in my fridge yet. And so I had to be adaptable in this new environment. I was extremely uncomfortable. I was nervous. How is this going to happen? Who is going to come to my house? How are we going to do this? And that is just a series of things about living in the world, is that you're going to experience things which make you uncomfortable, but you have to learn to be okay with that. And you have to learn to be okay with, my life will not end after this happens. I'm going to keep learning. Going to keep growing. I'm going to keep doing. And that's one of the main lessons I teach my students, is that, English will be difficult for you, just like Japanese was difficult for me. But unless you keep trying, right, you'll never grow. So you have to keep going into these places that make you uncomfortable, because that's where the real personal growth happens.
Thank you, Samantha. Hope that you got your washing machine working.
Oh, I did. Got a brand new one off of Amazon. It was beautiful.
Oh, then you had to learn to use Amazon Japan too. Yeah. Derek?
Well, how do I start from this? Like, I think a lot of things I would want to say to others have already been addressed by the other people. But personally, for me, is that I think when there are pre-existing communities like JET, yes, but I do think, and based on my personal experience, that you can find community also at the most unexpected places. So I debate on whether I wanted to discuss it a little bit, but my 140C research projects was had to do with some social issues regarding seifuku, Japanese school uniforms, and well, I did my research, and that was that. And then after graduation, I kind of just met with other people on Twitter that will also share this seifuku interest. And 2 years down the line, I go to Japan for the first time. I meet a bunch of them. I made a whole bunch of friends, and mostly LGBTQ, by the way, so that's a plus. And I got and then I go again. I make more of these friends, and I eventually met my current partner. And sometimes it's like what was it? My Japanese teacher in high school had a favorite quote from a tiny spark can light a mighty flame, and I believe that is what happened to me, and my little action in 140C has transformed me to what I am today socially. Yes, I feel like you can find community at the most unexpected places.
Derek, thank you. You hit exactly on one of the things that several of you have already hit on this, that the university focuses primarily, of course, on the academic work that is part of the university mission. But many of you have talked about the fact that Japanese studies is a small enough program that you get to know other people, you build community. And then we had asked everybody to think about ways in which the Japanese studies major and various experiences here may have affected your personal life as well. Thank you for, for just sharing that aspect, because I think that's something that a lot of us experience within. I can tell you that I still am in contact with people who did East Asian studies in my graduate program. You don't lose this because there aren't a lot. It's as Megan said, it's both small and large, right? And it's deep, right? It's like what, all those mega niches, right? It's just like, it's a very large, very small place. So thank you for sharing that, Derek. Jackie? And then we'll open it up to Q&A. Yes.
Yeah, so I think I sort of have a very broad sort of advice, but I think it's also very, I guess, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it in detail. But basically, find your passion and figure out how to add Japanese into it, right? So whether it be learning about Japan, within that aspect, or, sort of just finding your community that bonds with you about, say just Japan in general, or maybe that specific Japanese interest such as seifuku. I think through that, not only are you going to be able to find, your community, but also it's going to make you engage with new things that are going to challenge you, right? So sort of just touching on a question I see in the chat, but also for me, my passion was in digital media, right? And so, during quarantine, when it was hard to find like a job that at the very least was relevant to Japanese, I just in my free time would do fan translations of digital content creators. And in recent years, it's been more focused on VTuber content. If you guys don't know VTubers, they're just basically sort of long stream sort of content creators who like go live and then they just talk to an audience for like hours on end, or maybe play games or anything like that while using like a sort of drawn character. It doesn't necessarily have to be anime, but that's typically the predominant style, right? And so, me during quarantine, not knowing what to do, I see like this growing community of fan translations for VTubers, right? And so I was like, hey, why don't I try it as well? Because I can help maybe an indie VTuber who I like, help them get, a bigger following. And so because of that, now, as I mentioned before, during my side projects, I still help them to this day while, I do my job working with cars. And I know I said I don't like cars, but I do know that in Japan, there's a big car community. So if that was my interest, I would probably go into that as well. Unfortunately, not for me. But if you like cars, just know there is a big community in Japan that likes cars. So um, but yeah, so just find your passion and find some way to integrate Japanese into it, because not only is it a good way for you to practice your Japanese every day, but also it'll help you build skills for your career that you want to use down the line, and in general, just make friends along the way, which is always a plus.
Thank you. So we're going to open it now to the Q&A, and you can just raise your hands, and we can call on you in order. And you can also put things in the chat. One of the things I already saw in the chat that came up in a couple places has to do with the process of applying to and affording graduate school in Japan, and also the process of applying to jobs in Japan. I think we've covered a little about that, but does anybody want to mention the applications to graduate school and being able to afford it, and or the applications to employment?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Yeah.
I think so. Starting with graduate school, I think the program I did, like I mentioned before, there was like English classes offered, so it's like international. Which when in Japan, there's kind of this like habit of calling things international, but then it's like English and kind of I don't know, like Western, or like kind of, I don't know, Anglo-centric, where it's like America and Western Europe. And but yeah, it was like an English taught international program. And so I would say that the process wasn't so much different from like what the process that we went for UCSD and whatnot. You still have to write like, a statement of purpose, like why do you want to go to Japan? Why do you want to study here? Why do you want to, why are you interested in the topic that you chose? The process for that is quite similar. Paying for Japan is very different. The price of Japanese universities is much, much less than anything you'll find in the United States, comparing quality. So like I went to Kyoto University, which is a public university. I think it's like one of the better ones in the country. And I think my tuition was like a total of like $5,000 a year or something, which is like, if you compare that to anything in the United States, I mean, it's just not even close. They also have like a lot of scholarships, so mixed scholarship. Unfortunately, I didn't apply in time to get that one, but I know that one is really good. They pay for like your whole tuition, and they ask you to like write some experiences about how your college life is going and whatnot, and like what you're doing. There's also, at least in the public universities, there's like tuition exemption. So if you file, like, it's kind of like FAFSA, like if you file, you can get some money back for the tuition. In terms of getting a job, really briefly, I guess, like I mentioned before, it's very determined. So like I would say I've never applied for like a full-time job in the United States. So that point of comparison is maybe a little bit weak, but from what I know about the, job application process in the United States is it's a little bit more like, of course in Japan, if you have like a really strong network, you can get a job through like introduction, or, you just apply and then you have an interview and then the person likes you kind of get in. It's not that simple, but obviously, but in Japan, um, one thing that's really important to understand is like it's like a game where it's like a very decided system. So like they ask you the same questions at almost every interview. So you get really good at answering the same questions. And if you prepare really well, you can do really, really well in those interviews. Um, they ask you for like the same paperwork, so like the same questions in type, so you can prepare like a document, a master document of like all your answers to those questions and prepare for it. I would say that like being as brief as possible because the Japanese job hunting system is very different. And I could go on for hours about it, obviously. It's very determined. So understand the system as well as you can. Understand the questions that they ask and prepare for that, because it's something you can very, very easily like kind of predict and expect and prepare for.
So in following up on that, either with Evan or any of the others, do you have any experience or know people who have the experience of applying for jobs in Japan from the US? Now, I know, Megan, you did that, because some of our students might be thinking about doing that before getting to Japan. And because of visas and whatnot, sometimes people think it's necessary. Do you have any comment on applying to, because Evan, I think you're applying from Kyoto University, right?
Yeah, so my visa
You're
process
applying
is just
from Japan.
changing from student to work visa. It's like probably
Okay.
much more simple. I just like the company is pretty much handling almost all of it for me, where they just send me the
Okay.
papers, I go to the government, turn it in. Yeah.
And for, I know, I don't know the others, but I know, Megan, you applied from here for a job in Japan, right? So how's that different or similar?
So you will notice on a lot of the job boards for foreigners, be it die jobs, there are a couple other methods, I'm blanking on their names right now. You will notice, unfortunately, that a number of the positions do say must currently reside in Japan. Exceptions to this do tend to be ALT positions, positions at universities with an asterisk. It does depend on the university. And then occasional different company ones, depending on the size of the company. From my understanding, a lot of the reason that many of the companies are looking for people who are currently residing in Japan is in part because they'd like you to be going to those interviews in person. I very much lucked out in that APU is an international school. And so they were perfectly okay having a Zoom interview and then assisting with the visa process, and also changing the start date, because there was no way I was getting a visa in time to start September 1st. When I got the offer not October, August 2nd or 3rd, purely because the certificate of eligibility takes approximately 6 weeks. And so that timeline obviously was not going to work out. So they were very, very flexible in that regard. If you are looking for a job in Japan and you're not looking to go on the JET program, Interact, or a different ALT or a Kaiwa position, I would keep an eye out for just on those different job pages, see if you can set an alert. You can usually set an alert for different regions as well as job types, and just see what comes up. I mean, hiring season is, most people are starting April 1st. So if you are a current, sophomore, junior, now's definitely the time to start poking around and setting those alerts. For seniors, it might be a little bit more difficult, but again, random things come up. And so sometimes you just get lucky, you happen to see the post, and you can go from there.
Does anyone else want to add anything to this conversation?
Really quickly, if that's all right. I would say like getting a job in Japan, I think is much easier if you can get your foot in the door to get to Japan somehow. So like, a lot of people, I think, you know, they have their opinions about JET and whatnot, but I think JET is amazing because you can actually get to Japan, meet some people, talk to people, get your foot in the door, like have the ability to like, you know, poke around and apply for jobs and stuff, which is really hard if you're not in Japan. I think it's much harder to do like if you're just in the United States trying to get to Japan. So, you know, going to school in Japan, language school even, or JET program, I think are like really good options to get to Japan so that maybe you can like move up kind of to get to the next step in whatever your career journey might be.
I would also say that I believe they have rolled out a new visa for recent graduates. And so I'm quite sure that UCSD meets the you have to be like a top 100 school on 2 of 3 different world ranking lists, and I'm pretty sure UCSD is on there. But it is for recent graduates, and I think it's within 3 to 5 years, something like that. I'm sure there are postings elsewhere. But that is also an option of getting to Japan and then from there being able to job hunt. But that is a very, very new visa. And so I think they're still working on the process a little bit on that regard. So I'm not sure how much like how-to guides there are online, but I'm sure you can find at least something.
One thing that I'd like to add onto this conversation is that I have friends who work in different industries. You know, the JET program, you meet so many people from so many different places. So you kind of run into these connections where you meet people. And something that I've come to know about the job hunting process, and also just by virtue of living in Japan in general, is how important it is to have sort of intermediaries, these kinds of guarantors that are on your side that can vouch for you as well when you're hunting for jobs or when you're looking to move, even things like that, is that having people in your corner who are probably, you know, your Japanese coworkers, you know, your supervisors, things like that, people who know you and know your work ethic, pardon me, who can vouch for you in this job hunting process are extremely important. So when I was much younger, I didn't really understand the importance of networking, right? I thought I can do everything on my own. You know, I'm very powerful. I can do this. But it is so important to make those connections and seek out people who can help you, who, you know, it's not just, you know, quid pro quo, we help each other. It's because you have a wonderful relationship with these people that you sort of happen into these jobs. And like I think Megan mentioned earlier, that you will meet people who say, so and so's hiring over at this place, and I know you, I like you, I can vouch for you at this new company. And I know a lot of people who get jobs that way. So while it is much harder to hunt for jobs outside the country, I do highly recommend, you know, coming here at least for a year. That was originally my plan, but then I liked my job and the people around me so much that I stayed at this job for a couple more years than I expected. But yes, getting your foot in the door is the most important. Making wonderful connections is the second most important.
I see in the chat, Kelly Young put in a question for everyone. Interesting question. Wondering if translating doujinshi or fan fiction would be useful or okay to put on a resume.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can add to that. But I guess overall it kind of depends on what job you're applying to. If it's in regards to translating or content similar to that, like you know, video games, you translate a video game from Japan that hasn't been released in America, something like that. Absolutely put it on your resume, use it as your portfolio, even if you don't have that much to show. Because I mean, even before my current job, I was working at a Japanese company that facilitated advertising from Japanese companies wanting to come to America, right? And so at the time when I applied it, as I mentioned before, I was doing like various different channels for different independent VTubers. And so at the time I used one of my sort of YouTube channels that I used to post my content. And it only had like 30 videos. And so I was like, I'm not sure if this will be enough, but hey, I'm gonna go for it. And they're like, yeah, this is a perfect example of how you can show us like marketing, because you know you're marketing this entertainment to people who speak English, right? So yeah, go ahead. Definitely put it on your resume if it's related to the work that you're gonna do. And yeah, it would definitely help out a lot because again, that's your portfolio.
Anybody else want to discuss that? If not, I have a follow-up, Jackie, and that is something I was wondering, since one of your earlier comments when you talked about your side projects a couple of times mentioning those. Can you say a little bit more about the role of side projects as connected to your main employment? Because I think we're in and I think this relates to something that Megan said earlier as well about it's kind of a scary time to apply for jobs. I mean, the economy's in transition and there's a lot of stress about getting jobs. And you seem to have leveraged some of your side projects into things that helped you get the job you have now. And could you say a little bit more about that side project piece?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, this whole thing of me doing translations online, it started from, being in quarantine where not many jobs were being offered, particularly ones where, people would sponsor a visa for you to go to Japan, right? So for me, I was like, well, since I'm not getting any sort of experience, professionally, what can I do in my free time to both keep up my Japanese skills and also be able to apply, my Japanese skills in a sort of content that I can eventually use for my career, right? Because I was so like very dead set on using Japanese in my career. I'm like, I got this degree, I'm using it, right? So yeah, eventually I just kept doing it. Not only just out of interest, because again, I was interested in that content, but also I did as a way to sort of help me. And then from there, I sort of learned how I could leverage it, right? So PR marketing, if you guys know, it has, especially digital ones, it has to do with sort of reaching a large group of people. And then obviously in the digital space, there's a thing called analytics of like how many people are seeing this, how many people are actually, being drawn to watch the whole thing or interact with it, stuff like that. And so obviously I'm doing it, on my own, doing whatever, because I have no idea how to use it at the first, when I first started, right? And then I was learning like, okay, since I have all this data that I'm slowly collecting, let me now you figure out how to use it, for, I guess in a professional space. And then also I learned that, if I get a certification in something related to that, it can solidify whatever experience I have as more professional, and then it feels more appealing to employers as well. So, building off of, just random hobbies and eventually finding a way to certify that, whether, take a class for it, getting a certification, and then eventually getting a job to fully solidify the fact that you have experience in that area. So it's a very slow process. And like I said, it was like a good year or two before I actually got a job that was related to that content creation sphere. So again, during that whole 1-2 year, I was like, is this working? Is this not working? I have no idea. But I kept doing it because I was passionate. And just in general, I wanted to help those creators I had found online because I wanted them to just, reach a bigger following. And so luckily, I eventually got a job that, I was able to get because of it. And even to now, I'm, am still doing it because I'm passionate about it. And then maybe again, I'll try to figure out a way to not have to talk about cars and maybe something I like more.
Thank you, Jackie. There's another question in the chat, Sydney Olson, who would like to know what the JET application process is like. And then after going through it, how is it adjusting to being an English teacher in Japan?
I suppose I'll start. I know Megan can also attest to this, but so the application process is just like applying to school. They'll ask you the very basic questions, what your education is like, any volunteer experience, things like that. Of course, you have to have a bachelor's degree, so please stay in school before you can apply to the JET program. But the most important part, like applying for anything, is your statement of purpose, right? They're looking for how passionate you are about not just coming to Japan, but wanting to share who you are as an individual with the people, when you come to Japan, when you work there, because it is, a lot of people get the acronym wrong. It is Japan Exchange and Teaching, right? So you are a cultural liaison, right? From wherever you come from, you are bringing your uniqueness and your experiences to the program, and the vehicle to do that is by teaching English. So the application is pretty cut and dry. Please work really hard on your statement of purpose. That is the most important part. That's what gets their attention and makes them interested in you. The interview process is another beast, right? But they're looking for what you wrote in your statement of purpose. They want to see that you are who you say you were, and that you are adaptable, I guess I would say, would be the best thing. Megan knows this acronym by heart. I'm sure she already knows what I'm going to say. Anytime you go on any JET program site, you will see ESID. Okay, and that means every situation is different. When you come on this program, no experience is the same. No matter who you are, no matter if you end up in the same city as someone, you will not have the same experience. Every school is different, every prefecture is different, every class is different. And so it's important that you keep your positivity and your passion for, I'm here in Japan, I want to do a good job, I really want to help these students learn and grow. And sometimes you will have curveballs, right? So your ability to adapt, to be flexible, to go with the flow is incredibly important to your success on the program. And I would say, for the interview, prepare as best as you would for any interview. You might get some questions. If you say you can speak Japanese, they will test you on that. They will ask you a few questions and they'll make sure that, you are who you say you were. But that process in and of itself is, I think, just like any other job. And then I believe you asked what the experience of working in as an ALT is like. How is it adjusting to being an English teacher in Japan? It was an adjustment. I will tell you, it was an adjustment, because you'll want to come into any job feeling really confident. But if you have no teaching experience, being a teacher is an incredibly, how would you say, it's an incredibly valuable job that is also incredibly difficult at the same time. So because you're living in a new country and you have this entirely new workplace with all new coworkers, there will be a lot of learning curves, But what you'll find is that each day gets easier. Each day is better than the last one. And so when you come into the shokuinshitsu, when you come into the staff room and you give your cute jiko shokai, that is just step one. Every single day after that, you'll be coming in ready to adapt, ready to work. And while it was an adjustment for me, I'm now for the fourth year of my contract. Every year has been so much better than the last one. It's just improved with time for me. And it has been probably the most valuable experience of my life thus far, was being a member of this program. So just my advice to you for everything: go with the flow, be adaptable, and do it with a smile and try your best.
I would also jump in and just add that keep in mind the timeline. So application usually drops, I think, August, maybe early September, usually August-ish, and is due mid-November. I believe you also need a letter of recommendation. So obviously reach out to your professors with good time. And they may, want to have a conversation about, okay, well, what's this for? What are you saying about yourself? Because they want to be able to match whatever you're saying and not say something completely out of left field. So definitely keep that in mind. The fact that the application is due mid-November and then you don't hear back until like February about whether or not you get the interview is nerve-wracking. It really sucks. But if you keep in mind that that is part of the process, that does help. Try and distract yourself with other things, I will say. Obviously, you will probably be finishing up your final year at UCSD and getting your bachelor's. But take a deep breath. It's fine. Occasionally, a cat will come and assist. Santan, say hi. And she says, "Hi, why are you talking to the screen?" And then the interview process. So I was a little bit weird because my state of residency was Pennsylvania at the time. I'm not originally from Pennsylvania, but I was obviously in San Diego, which is covered by the LA consulate. So I did my interview at the LA consulate, but this did present a little bit of a problem when it came to where I departed from. Purely because on JET program from the US, there are two cohorts, cohort A and cohort B. There's about 2 weeks difference of the departure dates just because there are so many people leaving at the same time. And so if you do currently have a different state of residency, and you are applying and get into the JET program, just keep that in mind. Particularly if you are in a city that has a cohort B departure or are covered by a consulate that is considered part of the cohort B departure group.
Thank you, guys. We're almost out of time, and there's one more question, which looks like a fairly simple one, although I've never heard of this. Chaz Pleasure asks, have you heard of the Future Creation Individual Visa? What do you think of it? I have not heard of that. Has anyone heard of this?
I did a quick Google search. I'm pretty sure that's actually the visa that I was talking about earlier, where it's very, very new. And if you are a graduate of the list of schools, I did just double check the document. UCSD is on there. So if you graduate with a bachelor's from UCSD, you do check off one of the big things for being able to apply for this visa.
Excellent.
And there's a page on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website in English, but that is the extent of my knowledge.
Thank you, Megan. Oh yeah, Chaz, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was the one who asked it. I was reading through this because I was originally told about it by my cousin in Japan who works at Citibank. What's interesting about this is if I'm reading the instructions correctly, you don't need a certificate of eligibility, which requires a sponsor in Japan. You can submit your passport, a visa application photo, documents to prove that you have a degree, that you have savings, describe what you want to do, get your curriculum vitae, and pledge to join the health insurance. And that can, if I'm reading it right, make up for the fact if you don't have a sponsor.
Excellent. Thank you. Is that, and that you put a website in the chat. Is that the website for this program? Okay, excellent. Thank you. And also, I'd like to draw your attention to things that can also, you can also see them on our website. Kumi has put a couple of things in the chat, just that are resources, including the virtual event we have about JET. And then Kumi, you put one other one in here, which was recommended recruiters. Did you want to say anything else about these resources on our website or Instagram?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, some of them actually we got from Megan too. And because some questions in the past, Bent did ask about those recruiters, like where do I find them? So she shared those links with me and I immediately posted them. So you can definitely check those recruiters if you're thinking about applying for a job that requires your skills, that, have something to do with Japan. And also, we share all the information. So like every time MEX, the government, right, the scholarship from the Japanese government or the JET program applications or anything related to Japanese studies or will be helpful for you will be shared through via email and Instagram. If you're majoring or minoring in Japanese studies, then you will receive an email from me. But if you're just taking the Japanese language courses for your GE or personal interest, and if you're thinking about like applying for a Japanese National Honor Society, when you graduate, then you might not be majoring or minoring in the program and you might not receive emails from me, but you will see the same information on our Instagram posts. So make sure that you follow them and that's where you can find all the information program related. And then I think I see that Evan is posting the Career Forum website too. So everybody bookmark them all. And yeah. And if you have any questions about those links, or if you want to get to know more, I'm happy to be the bridge, and then I can reach out to the alumni speakers and I can exchange your contact information, whatnot. So let me know if you have any questions.
And it's come up several times about not being afraid to go to office hours for your faculty, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because we won't always know every answer to every question you have, but we do know how to send you to the right resources. So, and that includes these applications for JET. I think Samantha emphasized how important these personal statements are. They really are very important. And you might want to start early enough. Megan was emphasizing how early you have to start to get everything lined up. It's not a bad idea to start early enough that one of us can read your personal statement draft and give you some advice about things you might want to add in. It's not uncommon that people don't know to add in things that actually the Japanese recruiters are really looking for, right? And so make sure you do start that process early. And you can make appointments with Kumi And you can look at our website and Instagram for these kinds of resources. And thank you all for coming. We're now out of time, but this was really great. And really thank you to Evan, Megan, Samantha, Derek, and Jackie for participating in this and taking your time and offering really excellent words of wisdom. Okay, I'm going to call it to a close now. And thank you, everybody, for coming.